KEET-TV and the League of Women Voters of Humboldt County present a forum for candidates running to represent the 2nd District on the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors. Viewers may submit questions during this forum by calling 445-0811. This forum will be simulcast on KMUD 91.1 and 88.1 FM and streamed live at our KEET.org website. And now your moderator, from the League of Women Voters, Nancy Kay.
Good evening. The League of Women Voters and KEET-TV present the candidates for County Supervisor for District 2. The term of office is 4 years, and with no limitations on the number of terms. The annual salary is $95,000. If you have questions for the candidates, please call 445-0811 now. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages the informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Membership in the League is open to men and women over the age of 16. Tonight we present the 5 candidates for District 2 Supervisor. We have Michelle Bushnell, Sean DeVries, Estelle Fennell, the incumbent, Rick French, and Michael McCaskill. If you have questions for these candidates, please phone 445-0811 now. The candidates will each have 1 minute to make an opening statement. They will have 1 minute each to answer the questions you present. Rebuttals and comments are allowed for 30 seconds, and the candidates will have an opportunity to summarize their positions and qualifications in 1 minute closing statements. The candidates have drawn lots to determine the order of their opening statements, and the order will be reversed for the closing statements. Again, questions for the candidates, 445-0811. We will begin with an opening statement from Estelle Fennell.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm running for re-election because I want to continue with the goal of moving our county forward and hold strong to the principles that inspired me to take this job in the first place. We all know that Humboldt County is going through a very significant transition. We continue to face significant challenges, but opportunities abound. And if we continue to steer our county toward a positive and brighter future, we can take advantage of those. This will take hard work, dedicated leadership, a strong will toward implementing our vision, and the experience and ability to get it done. I have been working to ensure that brighter future for on many different levels, and have a proven track record of leadership and achievements rooted in teamwork and respect. I am passionate about citizen empowerment and believe very strongly in the power of teamwork and respectful collaborative effort. I'm the chair of the board this year, and I'm very determined to make sure that our district and the county as a whole are well served.
Thank you. We will next hear from Michelle Bushnell.
Good evening. I'm a 4th-generation Southern Humboldt resident who was raised on a cattle ranch by my grandparents. Together, my husband and I have raised our 6 children in the 2nd District and intend to spend our remaining years here. I have always deeply cared about my community and been proactive in helping whenever I see need. I believe that if I were to be elected, I would be a diligent and transparent supervisor for the 2nd District. I have a variety of life and employment experiences which have led me to where I am today. From years of driving school bus to owning and operating a retail store in Garberville. I will bring this range of knowledge and experience to the office of supervisor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will next hear from Michael McCaskill.
About 12 years ago, I found myself by accident at the meeting of the Redway Community Services District. I decided just to stay and watch as a citizen and came the next month, and the next month, and about 2 years later, I was chair of the board. I served in that capacity for about 5 years, and now other board members are serving in that capacity. We're sharing the load. And also in that time, I was sent off to be a member of the Redwood Region Economic Development Commission. During my time there, I initiated a program to put solar panels on public agency buildings, and which is being done throughout the county, and our local district in Redway being one of the first groups to have that. I'm very concerned about the environmental impacts that our economy is having on us, and very concerned about the economic impacts that our environment is having on us. Please vote for me, and please continue to make Humboldt County a great place to live.
Okay, thank you. Sean DeVries, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sean DeVries. I want to take a moment and say hi to my son, Ivan. Hi, I love you. I'm running for office because I was asked to run. I look around in the community and I'm concerned by what I see. Our economy is facing a downturn and we need to change it. So good news, we can turn around if we act now. We can stop the losses and we can generate the funds that we need to bolster our economy and to defend ourselves against climate change. Make no mistake, climate change is coming, and unfortunately right now we are not prepared. The only way forward is together. Together we can fix the economy, and together we can defend our county against climate change. Together we win. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll hear from Rick French.
Hi to everyone in the viewing audience, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for making this possible. My name is Rick French. I'm running for District 2 Supervisor. First, the basics of who I am. I've married my wife Nancy. I have 3 grown adult children and 4 grandchildren. I've lived in Humboldt County for 40 years, 6 in Bloxburg, and 34, 35 in Hydesville. I'm the former manager-operator of the Hydesville Water District, and I'm running as a anti-corruption candidate. I'm running for District 2 Supervisor. I believe that my supervisor has spread herself too thin in trying to meet the responsibilities of her office. Estelle was totally ineffective in my family's real estate dispute with the county, and in fact has always refused to speak to me at all.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll begin our questions. The first question will be answered first by Michelle Bushnell. And the question is, should the county hire people experienced with cannabis, farming and ranching to work with people trying to get cannabis permits?
Hi, yes, I believe that the county is lacking in having the experience of a cultivator on the board, and I think it would immensely help the planning department and the people putting the policies together if we had a very experienced cultivator, cannabis person join that team.
Okay, and next we'll hear Sean DeVries.
Hi, I think having an environmental consultant that works on behalf of the county to help growers move through the permitting process and come up to code with what the state permit requirements are would be a wonderful idea. I fully support that.
Okay, Estelle Fennell.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Should the county hire people experienced with cannabis farming and ranching to work with people trying to get cannabis permits?
Well, interestingly enough, I think that there are a couple of people already in the planning department who might have that kind of experience. But I think that the bottom line is that we need qualified people in those positions, and whatever their background, if they can do the job well, that's what we need.
Okay, thank you. Rick French.
Well, just so there's no misunderstanding, I think Michelle commented as if it was a position on the board being asked to. I don't think that's what the question was, and I think that there's no reason for the county to be hiring consultants to help novice growers. I think we're way beyond that point. There's plenty of consultants, and the growers are on their own there. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael McCaskill.
Well, I think absolutely the county should be hiring people who are experienced in the sorts of fields that they're going to be regulating. As Rick said, maybe we don't have to have that necessarily to hold people's hands through the process, although I know a lot of very small people are unable to afford many consultants, so that could be a help. But especially it would be helpful for when the county is figuring their things out themselves to have experienced staff members on that team. And as Estelle said, I suspect there are actually people in the planning department who do have experience growing cannabis, and if it were safe for them to sort of admit that and share that, that would be a good working environment.
Okay. The next question will start with Estelle Fennell. The question is, how will you streamline permits and building within the county?
Well, I think we're working on that now. It is, with regard to planning, the director has been very, very conscious of the fact that there's a lot of desire for streamlining. I think with regard to the cannabis permitting in particular, that is a very difficult and heavy lift, given all of the state regulations that have to be satisfied. However, it is being worked out now, and I do believe that it will be better in the future. Also, with regard to streamlining in other areas, I think we really need to just send that message to the department and make sure that the director takes that message, and I believe he has. I think he really understands what it takes, but it does take good staff who know what they're doing, who will follow directions well, and who have a good working knowledge of the issues that they deal with.
Okay, thank you. Rick French.
Well, I think that the county should definitely streamline to any extent possible the permitting process. I think I will give credit to the board for, even though the Turgeon thing got mixed up with the cannabis, that I understand from what I'm reading that we're #1 in permits, so they did get a lot done in these confusing times. And I just think already the board's talking about cutting out some of the fees and due and doing the best we can to give Humboldt growers a leg up as best we can, and then get out of the way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Bushnell.
I believe that it's really important to streamline. I believe too that for that to happen, you have to have good staff. You also have to have accountability for your staff and your department heads. I believe that follow through is very important and not dropping the ball. I also believe that feedback to the public is super important. Misconceptions can happen really easily when you don't follow through with feedback. I also think that they're recognizing, the planning department is recognizing that possibly in the past those all of those have been an issue, and they're trying to move forward. But I also believe there are a lot of things get in the way, and if they could try to organize a little bit better, it would possibly streamline much easier. Thank you.
Okay, Michael McCaskill.
I think we definitely need to have experienced people in the county office in order to give good service, and being able to retain qualified people is always a tough thing up here too. My experience at the Planning Commission or at the Planning Office isn't that deep. I was actually there just the other day, and I received excellent service. I've been a little confused when I talk to people out in the streets about the campaign, and some of them are very, very strong supporters of Estelle because they had projects which were languishing in the planning department for months and months, and then they talked to Estelle, and Estelle was able to talk to the planning department, and their projects were taken care of very, very quickly, and they very much appreciated that, as they should. But that says to me, why is it that there's a system where the politician can push and make things happen? And maybe the politician just was able to push and get people ahead of the line, which isn't fair to the other people. But obviously it is possible for things to work quickly there, and I need to learn more about how that happens.
Okay, thank you. Sean DeVries.
All right. How would I streamline building permits, cannabis permits, any sort of permits in the planning department? Well, for cannabis, I would start by writing the process down. You could do that with a simple software implementation or just with pen and paper. I think most importantly, though, what we need is a paradigm shift in that department. Right now, it seems from where I'm sitting that it's somewhat of an adversarial process. They're looking for reasons to stop you from coming through, looking for opportunities to charge you and tax you and fine you and fee you. And I think, you know, here's a good example. The Safe Homes program, that's 41 pages of remarkable regulation, very well documented, very well done. The Cannabis Permit Application 2.0 is a broken 2-page web form that you can't fill out digitally. And I think that maybe we just need to correct that. Thank you.
Okay, and Estelle Fennell has a comment.
Just a little bit of a clarification. I thank Michael for pointing out that I have worked a lot with my community. It is a little strange, but it is very important to understand that the supervisor is actually the conduit between the district and staff. And if the supervisor has a little bit more knowledge of a situation, that can help the staff understand. So I think that that's a good thing, that a supervisor can help their constituents through those kinds of things.
Okay, our next question will begin with, oh, excuse me, Mr. French.
I'd like to comment on that. That sounds good, what Estelle just said, but in reality, it's more like what Michael said. It seems that some of the board members have a hard time understanding that the nonpartisan office that we are trying to occupy, the nonpartisan office, is a 20% vote for whatever Humboldt County wants to do. And it isn't the proper place for a supervisor, however informed, to go down and notify.
Okay, thank you. But Mr. French, we're going to ask you the first question now. So this is about the use of veterans' property. In your opinion, what should be built on the property owned by veterans in Garberville?
Well, I've been reacclimating myself to Garberville. I used to be there much more often when I lived in Blocksburg. From what I learned and how long that Veterans Hall controversy has simmered, I would like to put the best, biggest building on the veterans lot that was donated to them and make up for the fact that the county totally fell down on the maintenance of that and created a situation that's yet to be solved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michael McCaskill.
I believe that we should basically fulfill our duty to the vets by giving them a building, well, not giving because they had paid for it before, but by replacing the building that the county allowed to deteriorate with a full-size vets hall like the one now, instead of the little, practically a closet that they've been allotted in the county campus. I think there's room on the lot, since it's a slight little bit of elevation change, that you could pile some dirt up at one side and excavate a little at the other corner, and we could have a 2-story vets hall with the vets down below, which could also be used as an extreme weather shelter, and then upstairs we could have housing for vets or for seniors or for senior vets or for whatever the community needs. Thank you for asking that question.
Okay, Sean DeVries.
I would put the Veterans Hall on the land owned by the veterans. I would put a place for recreation. Maybe an alternative use for that space could also be an emergency shelter for anyone who might need it. I think it's important that the veterans have a place to come together and, you know, be in company, good company. Everybody needs that. Thank you.
Okay, Estelle Fiddle.
Yeah, well, the Vets Hall issue is really a painful one for me, because when I came on board 7 years ago, it was already in disrepair, and after that it wound up being infested with mold, and the court had to close there, and then the county had to close it. We did a study, and it appeared that the very best way to move forward, instead of patching a building that was really pretty inferior, was to actually build a new one. And the county has identified funding for that, and I'm happy to say that we're moving forward with that. There will be a master facility plan coming before the Board of Supervisors, and at that point we can talk about what our overall campus in Southern Humboldt will be. The Vets Hall will definitely be a very important part of that, and of course I believe that it should be on the footprint that the existing hall stands on. The vets should have the first say in that and how they would like it, and there will be a lot of community input included when we make that plan.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Bushnell.
I think that the Vets Hall should, if it actually has to come down and can't be saved, that it should remain on the veterans' property. I also believe that the input should come from the vets, and that we should, they want a venue also, not just the vets hall, but they generate income from their veterans hall. They want a kitchen, they want a venue to rent out, and they want a meeting place where they can feel comfortable. And I think that sooner than later we need to give them some direction. I've talked with them and they don't feel very confident about the process right now, but I absolutely think that the vets hall needs to be replaced on the vets hall property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question will start with Sean DeVries, and the question's regarding Humboldt County's unfunded pension liability. The question is, do you know how large it is, and how should Humboldt County plan to pay it down?
I was worried that I was going to get asked a highly technical question tonight and not know the answer, and here we are. I don't know how much it is. I think it's tens of millions of dollars, but I could be way off. I did read it at one point, and I just didn't retain it, unfortunately. I got distracted by all the ADA problems that we've been facing for over a decade, and those compliance issues were something I was a little more familiar with, but I don't know. But how would we fix it? Bring more money into the economy. That's the only way we're going to fix any of these problems. And so we need to fix cannabis permitting and get more jobs going and bring more money in, and then that'll help fund the unfunded liability.
Okay, Michelle Bushnell.
I also don't know the answer to this question, and given if I became supervisor, I would be well informed about these issues. At this time, I don't know the answer, and I believe that generating income for our county is what we need to help in money management, and I think that it's a huge, unpaid liabilities are a huge problem everywhere. Thank you.
Okay, Michael McCaskill.
I believe actually that the county isn't so much in arrears, but it's that CalPERS, the California Public Employees Retirement System, is in arrears. I think they're about a $380 billion pot of money, and their actuaries say they're about 80%. I feel for Sean because I haven't looked at these numbers in a little while. They're only about 80% covered, and they have a bunch of pretty toxic investments, including they own 34% of the National Enquirer of all things, which is losing them a lot of money. Their former executive director is in federal prison for corruption as we speak, and one of their board members committed suicide right before the FBI came to speak to him about the $50 million in placement fees he received from Apollo Capital Management, who are still private equity managers for CalPERS. So the problem is really in CalPERS's hands. They are going to come to us and ask for more money soon if we don't watch out.
Okay, thank you. Rick French.
I also didn't know the exact total. I did know that whenever it came up in the paper that it was just something that was a big worry and didn't have many years to think about it to get it fixed. Again, I think this and corruption go hand in hand. One thing I would do as a supervisor, if it's, I've been watching the meetings for 2.5 years because I have involvement in most of them and plan to be as well informed as I can when and if I can be seated. And I would like to start releasing either semi-annually or annually the cost of litigation, either both insurance cost and attorney's fees to the county for the endless amount of litigation that's been on the agenda for 2 years, and get real transparent about what caused all this, separate from CalPERS not being a very good investor with the employees' money. Thank you.
Okay, Estelle Fennell.
Well, this is an issue that's facing pretty much every county. And Humboldt County has chosen to use the PARS, contracted with PARS. Basically, the idea of that is that we start to whittle down on the unfunded liability part. I believe we've gotten some good advice on that, and we're going to go forward with it. It is working. And so, yeah, it's going to take time. There's no doubt about it, and it's looming for everyone. But we have decided to invest with PARS, so that's how we're dealing with it.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. DeVries, did you have a comment?
I did. I just wanted to say I Googled it, and it's $232 million unfunded for Humboldt County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next question will start with Michael McCaskill, and it's again on cannabis. Not all voters are happy with the current emphasis on the cannabis industry. What are your thoughts? Describe other ways you would promote Humboldt County.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We need a diversified economy. In many ways, the cannabis boat has left, and the state has created regulations which, even if Humboldt were perfect, it would be very difficult, and our economy has been very, very hurt. So we need to diversify. We need to bring in more tourism, although only in ways which keep this a place that people would like to come. We need to produce a lot more energy here, because every dollar that we spend on energy that is locally produced is a dollar that stays within our local economy. We need to encourage food production and encourage the name of Humboldt for food production too, and for beer production, cheese production, and all the great things that Humboldt County can do. So a diversified economy is a healthy economy. And I'd like to also point out that the Greek root for economy and ecology, ecos, for home, is the same root, and you really can't have a good economy without a good ecology.
Okay, Estelle Fennell.
Well, first of all, yeah, there is a lot of emphasis on it. This has been a huge lift. The legalization of cannabis has been very demanding for Humboldt County. There's no way in the world with local control that Humboldt County could have said we're going to ban it. That would not have worked. It didn't work in the days before legalization. It certainly wouldn't work now. However, I do believe that we have to concentrate on a diversified economy. Boom and bust just doesn't work. And we are concentrating on that. We have interest in such things as the aqua farm. I'm going to be out and visiting that very soon. We're also looking at clean energy and energy generation. We have the microgrid up in Arcata. We're also looking at tourism. That's very important. We have to remember logging and fishing and all of the things that we're good at. So I think a diversified economy is the way to go. And as far as marketing Humboldt County, all of those things that we hold so dear should be part of that marketing.
Okay, thank you. Sean DeVries.
Okay, tourism, we are the number 8 county in the whole state, I believe, that in terms of the dollars coming in for revenue generated by tourism. So tourism is absolutely massive for Humboldt County, and we need to keep that going. Redwood trees, really good place to start with that. The bay is beautiful. We've got great oysters and cheese, all these things that people like. What would I do to bring new money in and diversify the economy, as people are saying? I think manufacturing of tiny homes could be a good fit for certain areas, possibly Fortuna. I think that implementing utility-grade solar installations at old mill sites around the county will generate several hundred local, high-paying, highly skilled jobs, and that we should definitely move on that right away. Clean energy and jobs, great combination. Same thing for an offshore wind farm. Lastly, I just want to wrap up and say that 40 years of being an economic engine is not boom and bust, and whether or not you support cannabis, sales tax revenues are down 14% because we don't have enough cannabis farms permitted.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Bushnell.
I believe that we we have to encourage tourism dollars, and I believe that how we do that is we have to market Humboldt as a whole, not as individual. Areas seem to be really individualized, and I think if we could get away from that and really concentrate on the whole of Humboldt, the beautiful redwoods, the oceans, we have the Ferndales, the Bembo Inn, it would be helpful. I think curb appeal in areas is really huge. I think that we need to clean up our towns and make them beautiful, and recognize that if you're a tourist and you come into an area and it's not very enticing, you might not want to stay. I do believe that cannabis is a portion of it, but we have logging and fishing, and all of those little moving parts make a very good, diverse economy.
Okay, thank you. Rick French.
Well, I look forward to the day that cannabis is just accepted, and hopefully we have successful retailers and wholesalers in the area, and Humboldt comes out looking pretty good here. I do worry about it because it is a commodity, and the whole commodity has to stay in the state. I don't quite see it. I often feel like the county should have a little sign that says, reminds people that it hasn't changed too much over the years, that 20% of businesses, even in the old days, $250,000, go belly up in a year. In 5 years, 50% of them are failures, and we're in a new industry. So, but I hope it the best, and we're not going to lose being the most sought after place to travel. We have everything here already. Thank you.
Thank you. And Still Fennell has a comment.
Yeah, I just want to say that those huge sales taxes, taxes that we had came from basically, arguably, the illegal cultivation. People had a lot of extra money to spread around. Now with the legalization, that's a little bit more steady, but it won't be a boom like the green rush that brought more than money into our county. It also brought a lot of environmental destruction and other really negative things. So I think that's the boom I'm talking about. We want to see things be more sustainable.
And Sean DeVries has a comment.
We're losing money in the county because we failed to transition the 12 or 13,000 cannabis farms into permitted farms. Yes, we have more permits than anyone else, but little over 10% conversion rate from illegal to legal is not a success. We can do better, and we have to if we want our economy to survive. Yes, it's only a piece, but it's a big piece, and we should address it because we can. Thank you.
Okay, Michael McCaskill has a comment.
Estelle kind of alluded to the environmental damage done by illegal grows, but I just want to point out that there's large, in some cases, environmental damage done by legal grows. It's just that you get a permit and it makes that legal environmental damage legal. So there's damage from both types of grows, although far less damage per capita than of a user's group than from the alcohol production of wine grapes.
Okay, thank you. Again, if you have questions, please call 445-0811. Our next question will start with Rick French. What is your knowledge of and your position on an initiative for the legal rights of nature?
The legal right to?
Of nature. The legal rights of nature.
That's the official title of it. I'm not familiar with it all, at all. Sounds good, but that's about all I have to say on it.
Okay, Sean DeVries.
I think it's a great idea. This was actually this type of law exists out there already, and it was presented to me the other day by a friend, Shakti. Thank you, Shakti. The EU has, for instance, a right for homeowners to their own solar energy. And so if a neighbor wants to put up a building that's going to block their solar light, they can't do that. And I think that nature should be afforded those same rights. No one's going to protect nature but us. Mendocino has it, and I think that we could work to implement rights for nature here. I fully support that.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Bushnell.
I'm also not very familiar with this. I would assume by the title that it has something with protecting the beauty of and nature. I would be supportive of that, as I do believe that nature has its rights, and that retaining those things that create nature are very important.
Okay, Estelle Fennell.
Well, we all love nature and we all want to protect it. However, I'm not going to say I support an initiative until I can read it. There's a lot of times that initiatives come out and we regret what was involved in them. I will say again, the concept, great idea. I don't know anything about this particular initiative, so I don't want to discuss it any further.
Okay, Michael McCaskill.
Yes, absolutely we need to give nature rights. I think one of the biggest issues is that it gives nature standing to sue in court and to try to overturn damaging laws. I believe it's Gary, Indiana has legally recognized the rights of Lake Michigan. I think Ecuador is another country which is legally recognizing the rights of nature. It is a big federal issue that I suspect the current Supreme Court would find a way to negate anything we tried to do, but very much like fighting corporate personhood, it's very important that we do try to fight these unjust laws which were oppressing us.
Okay, our next question, Michelle Bushnell will answer first. What is your position on the Cuddleback Elementary School Bond Measure P, which authorizes $730,000 in bonds for building repairs and improvements?
We just went through this in Southern Humboldt where we got large bonds to repair our school districts. And I believe that you have to have your schools and your hospitals to retain people. And I believe that if there isn't the money in the school system to upgrade school districts right now, so I think it's really important that we keep our schools up and new and functionable. And I think that it's a good idea to do that to support your community, and it encourages people to want to stay here for the schools and to really buy into your community. So I think it's good.
Okay, thank you. Rick French.
Well, actually, there's not much I can say about Cuddleback School and the bonds because as strange as it seems, it became involved in my dispute with the county over my concerns with the bonds for both Cuddleback and Bridgeville schools and the method of them being put forward. And that's about all I can say.
Okay, thank you. Estelle Fennell.
Well, as a fan of all the great people at the Cuddleback School, I think that if they feel they need to raise those funds and the support is in the community, I absolutely support them. It's important when you've got these rural schools that are really like a center of not only education but community involvement to give them as much support as you can. And so I would say that, yes, I'd like to support those guys.
Okay, thank you. Sean DeVries.
I think education is supremely important. It's one of the most important things that we can do to protect our future and lift ourselves up. And so anything that's going to improve education, I'm all for. I would say that I have come across bond deals in the past that have maybe not had generous terms or favorable terms, or somebody's been involved in the process who maybe didn't have the best motives. I don't know if that's the case here. I haven't read through all the documents, but if, as Estelle said, if the community supports it, I'm all for making schools stronger and better, able to educate our kids.
Okay, Michael McCaskill.
We absolutely need to support our schools. I don't live in that district, so I would defer to the people in the Cuddleback area if that's how they want to do it. That's pretty much the only way that we're given as an option. I think Sean was almost hitting on something that's a big concern of mine with bond financing in general, which is that by the time the interest has been paid, you're often paying over a 20-year bond almost, maybe not quite, but almost twice as much as the actual amount of money that you're bringing in at the beginning. Since often these projects take a long time to do, that you could probably spend 1/10 of the amount of money that you're getting from the bond every year for 10 years, and you would have as much as you would have gotten from the entire bond, instead of paying twice as much over 20 years. So I'm leery about bond financing, but I understand why the people in the Bridgeville area, the Blocksburg area would want to do that. And we definitely need to support our schools one way or another.
Okay, we have a comment from Rick French.
I would just like to add that I definitely support the schools and what the people that the children attend the school. My wife taught at Bridgeville and worked at Hydesville Elementary for many years, and I consider teachers one of the most underpaid trades, practices, professions there is. Thank you.
Okay, and Michelle Bushnell has a comment.
I just want to say that the bonds are interesting, and to make sure that the Cuddleback people really investigate the bond and know the terms. In Southern Humboldt, I had restraints about our bond. I voted for it because we needed our school fixed, and it was really important. But just investigate the terms of the bond and know all about it before you vote for it.
Okay, thank you. Our next question will start with Sean DeVries. What is your plan to fix the roads in southern Humboldt?
Okay, so short answer is I would move funds from Measure Z, Measure O over to repair roads. Additionally, I would work with local law enforcement to increase local registrations of vehicles, thereby allowing more funds to be obtained via SB1 from the state. So how do we replace those law enforcement funds? Well, maybe we could do a tax stamp on unpermitted cannabis and put that money back into law enforcement. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle Bushnell.
I think that money management might be one of the reasons the roads suffer. I think that before we do work on roads, we need to investigate that we're putting the money to work for the best of the road, not just hastily doing road repairs without really investigating alternatives. I think that possibly if we were to patch, when we do patch jobs, if we were to do patch jobs just a tad bit better for long-term sustainability instead of year after year patching the same hole, that we could get farther down the road of repairs. I do believe that we would have to divert funds from somewhere. I know the issue is monies. I do think that Tom Matson does a good job at trying to get everything fixed, but 12,000 miles of roads is a lot. And I just think that we need to really concentrate on what we're repairing, do a good job so that we can move to the next one.
Okay, Rick French.
Well, I think that, as I say, I've been watching the meetings for 2.5 years, but it's still hard to tell what's going on behind the scenes. Looking at the budget for last year, 75% to law enforcement, 25% to roads, didn't work out too well. That didn't seem like a good plan. When I lived in Blocksburg 40 years ago, a year after I moved there, the supervisor, Harry Pritchard, came out to Blocksburg to explain that the road was going to have to get closed off between Alder Point and Garberville. They didn't have the funds to maintain it. We're just repeating cycles here. We need to fix the most fixable roads fast.
Okay, thank you. Michael McCaskill.
A little correction to the numbers that just got out there. I think the sheriff is about $41 million and the roads are about $45 million, so they're close to the same. In southern Humboldt, we choose to live a rural lifestyle. That means that we're going to have to pay a lot more of our budget towards roads. You can't have a free ride on that sort of thing. We're already actually subsidized by the county on one of the last tax measures. As it's written, actually partly written by Estelle, it takes more money in her role at HCOG. It takes more money from the Eureka area and subsidizes the unincorporated areas. So it's going to be a hard trick to get more money out of the North County, and I think that we need to take our future into our own hands and make a special district for roads. And so we would constitute that special district and we would raise our own money and we would spend that money as we saw fit in southern Humboldt. So begging to the people in the north, they're tired of hearing us say we need more money for our roads because we choose to live rurally.
Okay, Estelle Fennell.
Well, roads are a huge problem. We've had like about $200 million worth of deferred maintenance, and we've got to change that around. Luckily, we have SB1, which was a gas tax, and in my role as a member of the Board of Directors of the California State Association of Counties, I worked hard to defeat a measure that would have pulled back that tax. So luckily, we have that. We're going to do that in phases and different parts on the bigger projects. In the meantime, we've got Measure Z and other revenue sources to address the day-to-day maintenance. I championed the idea of having local contractors do the most outlying areas, and we're doing that in a couple of areas here in Humboldt County. I'd like to see more of that public-private partnership, and that frees up our road workers to work on the more egregious issues that we have. We're spending millions of dollars every day on roads, and we need to make that count. And I've done a lot of work on it, and I'll probably talk about it again.
Okay, we have a comment from Michelle Bushnell.
I want to recognize that with sales tax falling, Measure Z funding is also less. So we can't really depend on having, if we continue and we don't stabilize our economy, we won't the Measure Z monies will be depleted. Also, I would like to see in districts possibly cannabis taxes, a percentage of those going to the districts they come out of. So Southern Humboldt being a big producer of cannabis permits, it would be nice if we could get some of those cannabis tax coming back in that area for roads.
Okay, thank you. Sean DeVries has a comment.
It's worth pointing out to everyone watching that we have the #1 most impacted road by climate change in the entire state. For those wondering, it's the road connecting Eureka to Arcata. So not in our district, but this brings up the point that we can get state funding because there are places all over our county that are about to be flooded in the next decade, and we can bring in state money to bolster and defend our county against those climate changes and repair the roads while we're doing it.
Okay, thank you. Michael McCaskill has a comment.
Both Estelle and Sean said something I wanted to mention a little bit. Sean's idea of raising more money by making sure that everybody who's local has a local license plate is, to me, sicking cops on tourists, and I don't think that's really a good idea. Maintenance absolutely pays. If you maintain the road, it costs a lot less over time than letting it fall apart and fixing it. And as far as giving local contractors the jobs to do it, something I learned in REDEC is that it's actually illegal for us to say, oh, this can only go for a local contractor. So, the market has us hostage.
Okay, thank you. The next question will start with Rick French, and it is, how do you plan to reach our CEA goals and accomplish 100% clean energy by 2025?
Well, I think that's a very ambitious goal. I think that given all the turmoil that's happened in Humboldt County with the PG&E, current bankruptcy, maybe we'll be owning part of the grid ourselves. I think that we just have to start plugging away at getting some stuff done. I think a lot of the inertia that's stopped any progress here is just a political will to find the money and get these infrastructure projects started and stop talking about the differences between all ourselves and the culture shock that's happening right here in Humboldt County this year with cannabis legalization. Thank you.
Okay, Estelle Fennell.
I think the 2025 goal is actually achievable in terms of power purchase agreements at the RCEA. So it might not be local power, but we can certainly make sure that it is clean energy. In the meantime, I think that the Humboldt Wind Project, Terrigen, taught us that we really need to be careful about what kinds of alternative energy projects we bring into our county. In the meantime, I think questions that were raised by that can be addressed. I have suggested that we put together a task force, and we're actually working on that to look at what sources of clean energy are possible here in the county, where they would be located, and also work with the tribes and every other stakeholder right from the get-go to make sure that they are located in the most suitable areas.
Okay, thank you. Michael McCaskill.
I'm glad that Estelle pointed out that we're not going to make that mandate with local power by 2025. A lot of people are looking towards the offshore wind. That's probably going to be at least 10 years. I think in the short term, we need to do more solar everywhere we can. I'm in favor of using biomass for energy, but very, very qualified, because almost all of the biomass energy projects I've seen have not been good forestry. So if we can have good forestry and produce biomass, and especially good forestry and producing biomass energy with biochar as a byproduct, then I think that's the right direction to head. I went to the recent Eureka/County sort of visioning scoping, and all of their plans for trying to barely reach our target, the very largest difference was made by using essentially biodiesel in our fuels, or ethanol in our fuels. And that is not really a solution to the problem, and it just shows how difficult the problem we have, that non-solution is the biggest potential solution on the table.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Bushnell.
I don't think that it also is obtainable by 2025 for local, so I would have to refer to professionals to advise me as where it would come from. Estelle, of course, has more information being the incumbent, but I think in the future we need to be more diligent about involving our constituents when we're trying to get a project through as like Terrigen. I also think we need to be more transparent and from the very beginning involve everybody to encourage that kind of growth in Humboldt County. I also believe that emotional decisions get made quite often, and we need to really rely on the facts when making decisions for Humboldt County. And not everything is going to make everybody happy, but trying to remember that.
Okay, Sean DeVries.
There's a master's thesis written by an HSU graduate that talks about implementing utility-grade solar installations at old mill sites around the county. Looks like a good idea to me. It would provide 20 to 30% of the county's energy needs, create 300 or so local, highly skilled, high-paying jobs, and minimal environmental impact because most of these mill sites are already concrete slabs. It would strengthen our grid, providing energy independence for any shutoffs that might happen. And that's a good short-term project that we can get started with now, creating jobs and clean energy. From there, we can move to an offshore wind installation. There are two companies. One is Altia. They're invested in big oil, and that's who the county is currently talking to. The other company is Equinor, and they invented floating platform offshore wind. I think we should talk to Equinor, and I've reached out to them and started that process. Thank you.
Okay, Rick French has a comment.
Yes, I would just like to say, this is related to the topic. I'm an old timer and I like the newspapers and I appreciate good journalism. And although I get my news off the internet, you won't find me on Instagram or Twitter or doing anything else. And I think the people need to realize that we're under a bit of attack by big money. And today's even got a thing about the Tribune publisher leaving after a year because he's been bought out by the same outfit that owns the Times Standard. They're decimating the newspapers at the same time they're offering us these money ventures.
Okay, thank you. Our next question will start with Estelle Fennell. What are your plans for bringing together the various factions in your district?
I think that I already work on that. As far as factions go, I don't like to think of factions per se. I think that people are genuinely have got different approaches to life and different approaches to culturally. I will say that my district is a very diverse one, and I pride myself in my ability to work with and talk with everyone. I think I've got a lot of evidence of that. So I don't see this as factions at all. I just see diversity, and I see being able to talk with all and work with all is by far the best way to be a good supervisor.
Thank you. Sean DeVries.
I think the way to bring people together is with compassion and understanding. That said, if somebody or some group is acting in a manner that's abhorrent to society or that's offensive or needlessly aggressive against anybody or any particular group, I think it's important that we call that out. Shame is a very valid and very powerful motivator for keeping people in society, together in society. And at this point, we need to come together. Climate change is real. It's coming. A lot of us have kids, and we need to work together.
Okay, thank you. Michael McCaskill.
I do think that there are a lot of different opinions, but I don't think factions is really solidly set because there's people who agree on one thing and half of that group will agree on something else with some other people and the other half will be disagreeing. So within every group even, I think there's a lot of diversity of opinion. I'm a big fan of calling the vote and moving on. I know that I'm going to be on the other side of an issue with some people, but I also know that I'm their ally on some issues, and you just have to call a vote because you can go around and around in the circles as long as you want. And at some point, you have fatigue, and only the people who are basically capable of fighting in the system long enough are able to go get their opinions heard. So I definitely think get as much information as you can and call the vote and not be oppositional about it and understand that you will be allies on some other votes at some other times.
Okay, Rick French.
Well, this takes me back to our rural days, and I don't think of it as factions either. I think of it as different towns, and when you look at what's in the 2nd District and realize how massive it is, I feel I need to unite the people of Dinsmore with the people of Redway and or Bridgeville or Fortuna. I just need to listen to them and find out what the county can do for them and what the county has fallen down on doing for them, and give them a voice on the board, that 20% voice. Thank you.
Michelle Bushnell?
I think the 2nd District is very diverse also, and there are lots of different groups and opinions. I believe that if you have to give your constituents a chance to express themselves and to realize that everybody's opinion, just because it differs from someone else's, is not wrong. And I do believe that compassion and trying to get along despite your opinions, that doesn't mean that you have to divide. And I do believe the supervisor needs to try to pull those groups together and pull those rural areas to support each other. I do believe that individualism is a really big problem in Humboldt County right now, and that to support our county as a whole, we need to be we don't need to agree on everything, but we need to be supportive of people's choices and decisions.
Okay, thank you. Estelle Fennell has a comment.
I'd just like to add that one of the methods I use in terms of reaching out throughout the district is I have an office in Fortuna. People can walk in at any time. They can make an appointment. The same is true in Redway. Of course, people can come visit me in Eureka as well. And then I go out in the district. I think that people feel very comfortable with somebody who just doesn't judge or have a particular way of presenting, but is there to listen and there to help. And I think that really does create unity.
Thank you. And our next question, we will start with Michelle Bushnell. On cannabis taxes, what do you think about the excise tax from cannabis farms going to the districts where they are generated?
I believe that not all of the excise tax from the districts could be solely go to the districts, because we use the planning department and county government to control those permits. However, I do 100% believe that the excise tax, a percentage of it, needs to go back into the district where it was created. Especially, a lot of cannabis permits are in rural areas, not in more residential areas, and those areas do suffer more with roads and need curb appeal in their towns. And I think it would be a really sustainable way to make those areas more efficient.
Okay, Sean DeVries.
I think that the cannabis excise tax should absolutely, most of it, come back to the district where it originated. I think right now most of it is going to the state, and very little of it is coming back, although we were awarded $1.3 million in trellis funding, which is nice, and we're grateful for that as a county. But the amount of cannabis that we have, particularly in our district, is on a national scale. It's where it started, and we're legendary for it, and it seems unfair that our roads and our Main Street are in such disrepair when we have this economic engine right at our doorstep. If the money came back to our community would be better for it. I would bring that money back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Estelle Fennell.
Well, cannabis excise tax are actually going to the areas where they're generated, but not all, and they also go to the whole county. The cannabis excise tax in Humboldt County stays in Humboldt County. It's completely devoted to our budget. We have created Project Trellis, which is funded by the cannabis excise tax. That helps the cannabis business. We have also funded marketing through the excise tax, and there are lots of other ways that the cannabis excise tax money comes into the areas that it's generated. It also goes into the general fund and can help the community as a whole. But the bottom line is, I do believe very strongly that it has to be recognized that a significant portion of the cannabis excise tax comes from the 2nd District, and I will fight for that to make sure that it does come back.
Okay, thank you. Rick French.
Well, just as Michael, his understanding of the budget and the monies is that the roads are pretty even with the sheriff's allotment, and it brings up the question of the word subsidizing. I think instead of thinking of subsidizing, we need to think of joining together. I would not be in favor of the excise being retained in the district. It's for the county, just as the north seems to be subsidizing the roads. Well, fair is fair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michael McCaskill.
I think the first issue I'd like to address about the excise tax is that it should be based on the THC content. It shouldn't just be a pure weight or a pure area sort of thing, because different people are going to grow for different things, and different consumers say, extract makers want different strengths, and there should be some flexibility so that people are, free to grow things that are a very low percentage. As far as should the excise tax stay entirely within Southern Humboldt, well, if we're going to go down that road, then should all of the taxes generated by students at HSU only be spent in Arcata? Should all of the taxes that are generated by all those businesses in Eureka only stay in Eureka? We're one county altogether, and if you actually did the math, you would see that we need to actually have as much solidarity with the county as possible. So I think that we should basically keep the distribution the way it is now, where a lot of it does come to the southern county.
Excuse me. So we have some comments to be made. Sean DeVries, you have a comment?
I'd like to clarify that excise tax does come back to the county. There are taxes on cannabis that do go to the state. And what I was trying to say is that I'd like to bring more of that money away from the state and into the county where it was generated. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle Bushnell.
Excise tax are actually based on square footage and how you intend to grow cannabis, so it's not a depictive of THC quality. So if you have 10,000 square feet and you're a adept person or not an outdoor grower, that's how your excise tax for Humboldt is given to you.
Okay, thank you. Estelle Fennell has a comment.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, as I stated, that this does come into the general fund, and it's not all going to go back into the cannabis businesses. That's just not what it's meant for. What it is meant for is to make sure that county services are maintained and that we have a good revenue stream. Remember, we talk a lot about sales taxes and cannabis. The excise tax comes from the legal regulated cannabis industry, and it is quite significant.
Okay, thank you. And Estelle, you'll start the next question, which is, what is your position on the federal ban on assault weapons?
The federal ban on assault weapons.
Yes.
Well, what I like to say when I get one of these far-reaching questions is I'm not running for president. So I'm not really going to talk too much about that, but what I will say is we just had a local issue with regard to firearms recently that came before our board, and that's going to be coming back, I think, next week. And this had to do with target shooting in the Samoa Peninsula, and it's very interesting because there is a target shooting range, but people weren't doing it safely, and so the question becomes, do we now stop target shooting in that area? We did that also with regard to Fernbridge, so yeah, we do have to learn to live with each other, and sometimes regulations must go in place, but as far as assault weapons, I'm going to pass on discussing that. Local issues I will discuss.
Thank you. Rick French.
I'm definitely against assault weapons for any reason other than war issued by the government. You know, if you want to go in the service and get a My Day and they are 16 for free, just give up what you're doing. I think I've been for some type of gun control all the way since the Brady handgun, which people not old enough will remember that they took a shot at Reagan and hit Brady with a handgun. I think we need to stop messing around. It took how many children to die, and we still do nothing? Connecticut, we still do nothing for Sandy Hook. It doesn't matter how many people die. What is happening here? The NRA, the leadership is being proven every day as fraud. Oliver North, the old timers showing up again. Frauds, all of them. The head of the NRA, corrupt. We're being ruled by money from afar.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Bushnell.
I also think that the issue of federal assault rifle control is not a issue for county government, so I wouldn't have an opinion on that as far as it goes for the county. I do believe that no matter what you do, if your intent is to harm somebody, you find a way to do it. I don't necessarily believe always that it's the gun's fault when people choose to do bad things with guns.
Okay, thank you. Michael McCaskill.
Anybody who thinks they need an assault rifle has some issues, I would say. I do believe that the Second Amendment is important because it's there to prevent us from the tyranny of government. However, people have proven themselves to be totally out of control, and I'm sure no one in this room has used an assault rifle in a bad way, but I don't really think that you need them. And I mean, I think we need to work to reduce the militarism in our society in general, and a good first step is to say that no, you can't have a machine gun unless you're some sort of qualified professional.
Oh, thank you. Sean DeVries.
I enjoy target shooting. Never been hunting, but I'd really like to try it at some point. I'm not sure I'm good enough with a bow to get anything, so I'd probably want to take a rifle or a shotgun. I don't think that anyone really needs an assault rifle for day-to-day life. So I'm not afraid to express my opinion on it. I don't really support assault rifles in general. I don't think the population needs them. An interesting idea, if all weapons were manufactured by the government, there wouldn't be a profit motive for war.
Okay, thank you. Estelle Fennell has a comment.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. Again, I will reiterate this is not a local issue. However, I do think that the federal government needs to look at the proliferation of assault weapons, specifically in the hands of people who do mean us harm. And how do we manage that? And how do they get into the hands of people who are mentally ill? How do they get into the hands of people who have a terrorist background? That's what I'd like to know, and I'd like to see that stop 100%. We'll see where it goes from there.
Okay, thank you. We are on our last two questions.
We each had them.
Okay, I only saw Estelle, so I'm sorry. We are on our last two questions, and so there will no longer be comments. And if you do have a thought you wanted to share, save it for your closing statement. And our first question will be going to Rick French, and it is on climate. What do you think Humboldt County needs to do to prepare for the impact of climate change?
Well, I think that the board has certainly long time been alerted to this coming, and it came out during all the recent hearings about the disappointment with Caltrans on the plans for the most endangered highway in our area, not in District 2, and it turns out it just seems like there's not adequate communication between the agencies, and there's not enforcements of laws that are already on the books. I think just as nationally, there's enough laws, there are just people in positions that are not enforcing their responsibilities to the people. And I would end that locally as quickly as I can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michael McCaskill.
We have to do a whole lot. We need to basically rearrange a lot of the way we do things. We need to plan for sea level rise, whether that means, deciding we're going to put a seawall here and we're going to allow the levees to be moved back in these farmlands there, and to say, no, you cannot build that expensive infrastructure right there. The sea level rise is absolutely coming, and it might take 100 years, it might take 200 years, but there's another risk, which is the tsunami generated by the large earthquake on the Mendocino Triple Junction. And in some ways, that's a similar sort of issue where you're going to have water where we don't want water. So if we were to try to plan for sea level rise while also being aware that that is in some ways sort of planning for a tsunami, so that you do not want your critical infrastructure down in low areas, whether it's because of sea level rise or tsunami risk.
Okay, thank you. Sean DeVries.
I think we need to build some seawalls and prevent the flooding that's coming in the next decade. I think we need to get very loud, very, very loud with the state and pull as much funding as we possibly can. And maybe the feds have money for us too. We need to bolster energy independence and resiliency in case of shutoffs, if power lines go down. I think that we should implement some emergency shelters, energy, food, rations, blankets, lights, all that, put those around the county and implement a plan and educate the population about what that plan is, just in case. It's not quite that dire yet, but it's coming, and we need to have a plan. And then the last thing that I would do is I would sue Big Oil. I would get the county to engage with the law firm, as several other municipalities have, and sue Big Oil to help offset the costs of preventing climate change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Estelle Fennell.
Well, I think there's two phases to this. There's the Climate Action Plan, which looks at existing emissions and then looks at the way we can reduce those emissions. That's one part of it. We look at that a lot in terms of clean energy, clean environment, etc. The other part of it is sea level rise and other effects of climate change. Let's not forget that we've had a whole community in Paradise burned to a crisp because of drought and because of huge fires. We've had fires jumping across 4 lanes of a freeway down in the Sonoma area. So we really have to support our firefighters. We have to support all the fire protection methods we can put in place. And we have to talk also about the resiliency in terms of our energy. So there's a lot of work ahead of us, but I think that we're working together pretty well on it, and I look forward to being part of finding those solutions.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Bushnell.
I think recognizing climate change is one thing that has to happen largely. I also believe that taking the information from the professionals and forming a plan and communicating the plan to your people and your community is very important. I also think that we should look into grants and matching grant funds moving forward, expecting things or preparing for things, not expecting, but preparing if we can. I also believe that climate change can be affected by each individual person if we take that incentive. We do a lot of planning and not a lot of work day to day, and I think each individual person can make a difference if you start doing that right away.
Okay, thank you. This is our last question. We'll start with Sean DeVries. How would you protect the flow of the South Fork of the Eel River?
I would work to improve it by removing all the impediments. Feeling a little uneducated, South Fork of the Eel River, I believe, is impacted by the Scott Dam, but that's not my strong suit. So if that's the case, I would remove the Scott Dam, and I'm going to sound very ignorant here, and if that's not the case, get with the environmental agencies that are working to protect the eel, Friends of the Eel and others, and work with them to implement their plans, because they are much more knowledgeable on this topic than I.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Bushnell.
I believe we need increased water flows. I also believe that because of the years of drought, we have a lot of sediment that has built up, that waters aren't flowing as well as they used to, and that really impedes like the fish habitat. I think if we could plan and try to clean out streams and clean out areas coming in, but definitely as a water flow, we need more water flow in the Eel, and I would have to ask professionals what is your plan, and then implement that, and then also let our community know this needs to happen to increase the water flow in the South Fork of the Eel.
Okay, thank you. Michael McCaskill.
Well, being on a water district that takes our water from the South Fork of the Eel, that's actually something I've been thinking about a lot in the last decade. Some of the things we've talked about are potentially having some sort of the main stem reservoir to provide pulses of water to come out, basically as much as the towns want to draw. Landscape level issues like road maintenance and road design, fuel load reduction. When you have a thick forest with lots of straws, as it were, going into the water table, there's a lot less water leaving the hillside. In general, if we do good land use practices, the hillsides themselves will act as reservoirs and keep the streams going and keep the streams flowing. I think I had one more thing here, but I've lost my notes. So in general, just absolutely, we need to take care of that river, and it's what we have to drink with down there. And oh no, the Potter Valley project is on the main stem, but we got to look after the main stem too. So it's mainly land use and also water storage for rural properties.
Thank you. Rick French.
Well, my wife and I were longtime members of the Friends of the Eel River, both mostly just contributing members. I would definitely work with them and the proper agency. I live very close to the confluence of the Van Duzen and the Eel, and yet I can't see them. But it's also where gravel extraction happens right there. And I know that's a sensitive topic. Yeah, I buy gravel down there quite a bit. And I just think that we need to get in and do it, and I can't believe we have not accumulated enough knowledge to know what the problems are. And I understand there's new church members that are in charge of the river now and the observation of it in terms of extraction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Estelle Fennell.
Well, yes, so with regard to the South Fork of Eel, I've got to tell you, I believe that the flows are already increasing, and part of that is due to the fact that we have less straws going into it. We have more of an influence on water storage, and I would say we need to both support and encourage that. The other thing is we have to absolutely work on reducing sedimentation. Road building that's not done properly really creates problems in that regard. But I do want to jump quickly to the Potter Valley project. I'm involved in that with the Eel Russian River Commission. I'm the chair of that. I'm also representing Humboldt County with the group that is looking at managing the flows in that as a regional entity since Potter Valley project is really not being taken forward by PG&E. So I look forward to working with all of the stakeholders in that and coming up with a good solution. The solution suggested by Humboldt County is to take down the Scott Dam.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to closing statements. I want to thank the callers for calling. We have several questions we were not able to address about rural parcel density, the school bonds, wind farm projects, helicopters, vandalism, lots of cannabis questions, herbicide use, and the board pay raise. So we're going to thank you very much for your calling in your questions and move on to the closing statements. And we will start with Rick French.
Well, I'm asking for the support of the massive 2nd District. I just found out when I was running just how large it is and how many towns I would be representing. I will admit that I was drawn into this political world, even though it's a nonpartisan office, by my righteous indignation at how this county foisted problems on me and my family. I'm not over that completely, but I'm shovel ready to get some things done and to get to the bottom of this dysfunctional county. Thank you. One thing that's popped into my mind, life is too short. I am 75 years old today. I know I have a constituency out there because today is my birthday and I share it with Bob Marley and Ronald Reagan. And to prove I can cross over, I did vote for Ronald Reagan, and I liked Ike too, for those old enough to know him. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Happy birthday. Sean DeVries.
I'm Sean DeVries. I consider myself a pretty regular guy. I have backgrounds in finance and real estate and law. And I'm here because I'm trying to make a difference. I have 4 kids, and climate change is coming, our economy is collapsing around us, and the world in general, we're just kind of in a dark spot. And so rather than sit at home and feel saddened by the state of the world, I decided to get engaged. So here I am. And if you like what you've heard tonight, or at any of the other forums or debates, or on my website at www.district2.me, then vote for me. But if you don't vote for me, that's fine too. Whatever you do, though, get out and vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Michelle McCaskill.
No, Michael.
I'm Michael McCaskill. I wrote the name wrong. Sorry.
Thank you so much to the League of Women's Voters
Yep.
for having this, and absolutely I wish that you guys were in control of the presidential debates. To stay on the federal level for a second, it really doesn't affect us in terms of what we are able to do, but it massively affects us in terms of what we have to work with. So I just want to put it out there that we have serious battles on the federal level, whether it's to have the military be, pulled back in and stop wasting all of our finances, making people mad at us, whether it's to, remove corporate personhood. There's a lot of the biggest battles are at the higher level up. Having said that, please support me in my quest for supervisor. I want to represent the future. My website is mccaskill2020.org, and the Time Standard has us, or the North Coast Journal had us do haikus. You all heard this last night. Mine is nature batting last, critical inflection point. Vote for McCaskill.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle Bushnell.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this together. One thing about these forums that I've learned is that there's a lot of information and knowledge to gain as being a supervisor. I also think it's really important to note that I think the constituents want to have an input and be represented by their supervisor. And I think the constituents are what the supervisor's job is pertaining to as far as representing them at a county level. I believe with my leadership qualities and your input, we can make the positive changes that we seek. I have always worked hard no matter what the task has been or the outcome desired. Having been a member of several community governing boards in various capacities, I understand the importance of having an effective working relationship with fellow board members. Amongst the many concerns affecting the 2nd District, I would really like the chance to work on the following if I get elected. I would love to promote economic stability throughout the 2nd District, improve the rural infrastructure, streamline operations of County Planning Department for business development, create solutions for the elderly, the veterans, and the mentally ill and homeless populations.
Sorry about
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you. Estelle Fennell.
Well, I want to thank everyone, especially the League of Women Voters, KEET-TV, and KMUD. This election is about who will guide and serve us through the next 4 years. I believe strongly that experience and strong leadership matter, and that's what I provide. I have a proven track record of working with my community to get things done. I have the skills and the courage to move this county forward in a positive direction. I believe strongly in teamwork and respectful collaboration. I have been serving for 2 terms now, and during that time have worked on and developed trusted relationships at the county, regional, state, and federal levels, which is essential for me as 2nd District Supervisor to bring needed services, resources, and funding to my district and the county as a whole. I am proud to represent the 2nd District, and I am endorsed by state and local elected officials, the sheriffs of Humboldt and Mendocino counties, and local trade unions. Please go to my website, estellefennell.org, to learn more about my achievements and the hundreds of community members who join me in asking for your vote for me on March 3rd.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of KEET and the League of Women Voters, I want to thank all of you for running for office. That's critical for our democracy, and thank you for coming here tonight. And I'd like to remind the viewers that candidates for 1st District Supervisor, Rex Bone and the incumbent, and Cliff Berkowitz, will be presented in a league forum on KEET on Thursday, February 13th from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. Now, last day to register to vote is February 17th. However, If you have not yet registered to vote, you may register at the county election office or at a polling station as late as Election Day. And you will be allowed to vote with a conditional ballot, conditional meaning that your voter's information will need to be verified before the vote is counted. And also, if you've changed your address or party affiliation, please remember to re-register. March 3rd is a presidential primary election. Additionally, we will be voting for our U.S. representative and our state assembly member. Countywide, we will vote for 3 of our 5 county supervisors for districts 1, 2, and 3. Candidates who need or receive a majority of votes will be elected. Otherwise, there will be a runoff election on the November ballot, and that's the presidential general election ballot. There will be other items on the ballot. There'll be some central committees, and there's one state initiative, a proposition, and depending on where you live, you may be asked to vote on various school bonds and various special taxes. So again, thank you. And thank you out in the audience. And please remember to vote on March 3rd. Become an informed voter, exercise your right to vote, and help make democracy work. Thank you.